Imagine this terrifying scenario. It's a quiet Sunday morning, the sun gently warming your room as you sip your tea, trying to ease the familiar ache of aging joints. Suddenly, your phone buzzes violently, shattering your peace, a demanding, guilt-tripping message from someone who claims to care about you. Your heart tightens instantly, your breathing quickens, and that harmless 5-minute relaxation quickly turns into a nightmare. Ignore this silent killer, and within moments your blood pressure could spike to lethal levels, your pulse pounding as fiercely as if you're on the verge of a full-blown heart attack. Yes, this might sound overly dramatic, but the reality is far more horrifying. According to the World Health Organization, WHO 2020, chronic stress is silently devastating your cardiovascular system, especially after the age of 65, when your resilience is dangerously compromised. Unchecked stress doesn't just ruin your day, it actively increases your odds of suffering, a stroke, developing heart disease, or triggering a catastrophic medical emergency. If you've never thought your closest relationships could become deadly threats, you're dangerously mistaken. The toxic people you've let into your life might just be dragging you toward an early grave. By the time you've watched this video, you'll know exactly which 5 personalities lurking within your circle could trigger alarms powerful enough to endanger your life. Ignore these warning signs, and you won't just endure emotional pain, you'll risk severe life-threatening consequences. As an award-winning physician journalist, I've seen far too many seniors unknowingly tolerate toxic relationships until the stress becomes physically overwhelming, triggering heart attacks and critical health breakdowns. Don't become another tragic statistic. Stay tuned because I'm about to reveal exactly how to spot these hidden threats before they devastate your health beyond recovery. Transition: a brief clinical story. Years ago, I encountered a patient I'll call Nora. She was 73, a retired librarian who adored classical music and had devoted her life to helping others find solace in books. Nora came in complaining of palpitations, insomnia, and a persistent feeling of dread. When I took her blood pressure, it was alarmingly high. Tests ruled out most organic causes, so I asked Nora about her daily life. She confessed to being bombarded by calls and emails from her adult nephew who wanted financial help. The nephew had no intention of paying her back. He only reached out to request money or assistance. Meanwhile, Nora's sister criticized her relentlessly, calling her soft or gullible for giving handouts. The tension around family gatherings left her feeling torn, used, and judged. That constant emotional tightrope walk contributed to her soaring blood pressure and near-daily headaches. After we talked through her situation, she agreed to set firm boundaries and seek counseling. Within weeks, her blood pressure began to improve. It didn't happen overnight, but removing those constant stressors provided a measurable difference in her overall well-being. This real-life example captures exactly why I urge you to keep reading. The stress these toxic personalities inflict isn't just emotional, it can be physically harmful. Science: how these relationships affect your body. You might be wondering, how can a friend or family member really affect my heart attack risk? According to Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, 2019 article on stress, emotional distress triggers a cascade of hormonal changes, particularly spikes in cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones, while useful in short bursts, can inflame the cardiovascular system if elevated for long periods. Chronic exposure to toxic relationships means chronic exposure to stress hormones. Over time, artery walls can stiffen, blood pressure can remain dangerously high, and overall immune function can decline. The mental toll is equally grave. Constant tension contributes to anxiety and depression. When your mind is weighed down, your body follows suit. Dr. Michael Greger, a well-known advocate of preventive medicine 2021 public talk, emphasizes that high-stress environments in older adults correlate with poor dietary choices, heightened inflammation, and less physical activity. His research shows that when people feel emotionally cornered, they're less likely to take power walks or choose nutrient-rich foods. The cycle feeds itself. Stress leads to neglect of healthy routines, which in turn worsens chronic conditions. Now that you understand how these 5 personality types can undermine your health, and how that might even ramp up your risk of serious heart conditions, let's name them clearly. Then we'll dive into why you must separate yourself from them or set unwavering boundaries if you want to protect your well-being in your later years. As always, remember, Consult your physician for personalized medical advice. The 5 toxic archetypes. 1. The constant taker. These individuals occupy your life like unwelcome tenants, demanding more and more space without giving anything back. Often they've been in your circle for years, so you might shrug off their entitlement as just the way they are. But every time they ask for your time, money, or emotional support, you invest resources you may no longer have the stamina to replenish them. Think of Ernest, a 69-year-old retired bus driver who saved money meticulously so he could enjoy a modest but comfortable retirement. Unfortunately, his adult grandson frequently asked Ernest for financial assistance to bail him out of irresponsible spending. Each time Ernest gave in, he noticed a rise in his anxiety levels and a gnawing sense of fear that he wouldn't have enough left for his own healthcare needs. Over months of endless demands, Ernest developed persistent chest pains whenever he got a phone call from his grandson. A quick trip to the doctor revealed elevated blood pressure and borderline heart arrhythmia. The emotional burden was literally striking him in the heart. According to the WHO 2020 official website, older adults need psychological stability more than ever. Because their margin for physiological stress is thinner, the constant taker robs you of that stability, fueling an endless loop of anxiety. If someone in your life acts as if your resources are a free-for-all, calling only when they need a ride, a loan, or a place to crash, step back. Get comfortable saying no. You are not a service provider. You are a person with valid boundaries and an inherent right to preserve your peace. Cutting down on the yes answers might feel awkward at first, but watch how swiftly your anxiety lessens once you stop feeding the relentless demands. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment, I feel it if you relate. I'm safe if not, and add a question for the doctor. This is your chance to reflect and share if you've encountered those constant takers who deplete your energy. Your willingness to comment can also encourage others to recognize the same pattern. 2. The chronic critic. We've all met that person who always has helpful feedback. They claim to be honest, realistic, or practical. In reality, they nitpick your choices in ways that make you feel inadequate. Over time, you might question whether you're simply too sensitive. But the effect is cumulative. Each barb leaves a small scar on your confidence and your emotional energy. Diane, age 75, spent decades as an elementary school teacher. When she retired, she looked forward to joining a local painting group to explore a lifelong love for art. Yet an acquaintance there, someone she considered a friend, would consistently offer backhanded compliments. "Oh, your painting is so colorful. You must have fun just splashing paint around without technique." Each remark felt like a needle pricking at Diane's newfound joy. Diane started skipping painting sessions to avoid the relentless critique. Her mood plummeted, and the isolation made her more susceptible to depression. According to the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, 2019 article on stress chronic criticism is a stealthy stressor. It lowers self-esteem, heightens blood pressure, and can push older adults into social withdrawal, cutting them off from important protective factors such as communal activities and supportive friendships. The reality is, at this stage of life, you should feel free to experiment without fear of incessant judgment. You've lived through decades of change and challenges. You've earned the right to express yourself freely, whether through painting, playing an instrument, or simply choosing which clothes to wear. If someone constantly finds fault, distance yourself, or if possible, speak up. Explain how their unsolicited remarks chip away at your well-being. If they respond with more hostility, that might confirm it's time to limit their influence. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment, I feel it if you relate. I'm safe if not, and add a question for the doctor. Your experiences might help another viewer who's wrestling with self-doubt fueled by ceaseless criticism. 3. The guilt tripper. The guilt tripper knows exactly which buttons to press, so you end up feeling like the culprit even when you've done nothing wrong. Often their tone is soft with carefully chosen phrases like, "I just thought you'd be there for me," or "I didn't realize your schedule was more important than family." You start to question whether you're heartless for saying no, and that's precisely how they keep you in their grip. Consider Leo, age 78, who had battled 2 bouts of pneumonia. He needed rest and a clear daily schedule to manage his health. However, his adult daughter frequently enlisted him to babysit her kids. When he politely declined, citing exhaustion, she'd respond, "I guess I'll have to cancel my plans, but I thought I could trust my own dad." The guilt seeped into Leo's mind, and he began to sacrifice the rest his physician recommended. One evening, he found himself short of breath and ended up back in urgent care. The doctor insisted he reduce stress levels and never skip his daily breathing exercises. According to a study published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society 2018, older adults who experience relentless emotional manipulation show higher incidences of anxiety and hospital readmissions for cardiac or respiratory issues. Guilt isn't just an emotion, it's a toxin that can erode health if left unaddressed. The best response to guilt trippers is a calm but firm boundary. There's no need to apologize excessively. A simple "I can't" or "I won't be able to" is enough. You do not owe an elaborate explanation for prioritizing your health. If they retaliate with more guilt, that's even more reason to remain steadfast. Don't give them the satisfaction of controlling your emotional temperature. Have you ever noticed this sign, comment "I feel it"? If you relate, "I'm safe if not," and add a question for the doctor. This is your place to share the subtle ways guilt trippers have creeped into your life so others can feel validated in their own struggles. 4. The secret competitor. Not all opposition comes in the form of blatant rivalry. Sometimes a person appears friendly on the surface, but behind that grin lies a need to overshadow or outdo you. They might show interest in your hobbies or achievements only to undermine your efforts or brag about how they did something better, faster, or more elegantly. For example, Alice, 76, joined a local choir. She invited her friend Karen to come along, thinking it would be a supportive, shared experience. But Karen consistently made side comments. "Your voice is lovely for someone who doesn't read music, of course," or "Great effort on that solo, mine was easier, since I had better practice years ago." Over time, Alice dreaded rehearsals because she felt overshadowed and belittled. Hidden competitiveness can be psychologically draining, particularly if you're not prepared to push back. You might internalize it thinking maybe you aren't good enough, or you're simply too old to compete with someone else's apparent talent. But remember, your pursuits in older age don't require outside validation. They're about personal fulfillment. The Mayo Clinic 2017 patient education materials notes that social stressors can spike cortisol levels, thereby weakening your immune response. For seniors, a compromised immune system can open the door to recurrent infections and slower healing. Someone quietly trying to undercut your achievements can trigger those stress responses in a way you scarcely notice until it's too late. Once you spot a secret competitor, limit how much you share about your goals. Notice if their remarks affect your mood or your motivation to continue an activity. If the negativity persists, consider distancing yourself to preserve your peace. You don't need to let every rival remain in your inner circle. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment "I feel it" if you relate. "I'm safe if not," and add a question for the doctor. Another prompt for you to weigh in, helping build a community that identifies and counters these toxic traits. 5. The passive-aggressive manipulator. Some individuals rarely confront you directly. Instead, they specialize in cryptic remarks, long silences, and pointed jokes that leave you feeling confused. You might ask yourself, am I imagining the hostility? They'll say, "Don't be so sensitive," if you call them out. This passive-aggressive dance is actually a form of control. Someone making sure you tiptoe around their moods without them having to openly acknowledge their grievances. Picture Martin, 81, who has a neighbor named Clyde. Every time Martin seeks help moving something heavy, Clyde jokes about Martin's old bones or lack of hustle. He never outright refuses but leaves Martin feeling belittled. One day, Martin tried to address the neighbor's sarcastic remarks, only to be told he was being too touchy. The conversation ended with Clyde strolling away while Martin stood there, unsure whether to laugh or feel insulted. Over months, Martin noticed rising stress every time he heard Clyde's footsteps outside. He dreaded random encounters. Eventually, Martin decided to limit unnecessary chats. Passive-aggressive manipulation may seem trivial, but older adults are especially vulnerable since stress accumulates. A 2020 meta-analysis in psychosomatic medicine found that ongoing low-grade hostility from interpersonal relationships contributes to heightened inflammatory markers linked with diseases such as atherosclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis. The solution: recognize the pattern and resist the urge to continually second-guess your own interpretation. If you repeatedly feel uneasy or disrespected, trust your instincts. Assert yourself politely or walk away if the manipulator refuses to engage in healthier communication. You've come too far in life to let subtle barbs and guilt-laced jokes undermine your mental health. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment "I feel it" if you relate, "I'm safe" if not, and add a question for the doctor. Here's your final invitation to self-reflect on the relationships that might be chipping away at your peace. 2. Why these archetypes are so dangerous. You might think I've handled these types of people for decades. Why should I worry now? The trouble is that as we age, our bodies become less adept at repairing the damage of chronic stress. According to the WHO 2020 official website, age-related changes make it harder to regulate blood pressure, blood sugar, and inflammatory responses. Prolonged tension with a toxic family member or friend can tip the scales toward serious disease. Moreover, older adults often have less physical and financial flexibility. You might not have the energy you once had to juggle confrontations, or you may worry about finances if you're on a fixed income. Emotional drain can lead you to neglect self-care. Perhaps you skip regular checkups or forget your medication times. These seemingly small oversights can accumulate into big medical problems. At this point, you might wonder if it's selfish to pull back from people you've known for years. Maybe you've built up a sense of obligation or fear of being alone. But is it truly beneficial to maintain a relationship that gnaws at your health, triggers guilt, and jeopardizes your psychological resilience? If the answer is no, you owe it to yourself to step away. By naming and identifying these 5 archetypes, you can set the stage for a more protective lifestyle. Kindly remind yourself you're not burning bridges out of malice. You're preserving the only body and mind you've got. Consulting your physician about stress management is a wise move here, as medical professionals can offer practical advice tailored to your situation, from blood pressure monitoring to targeted counseling. TD. Expanded case studies to illuminate the risks. Sometimes one story or 2 examples aren't enough to capture the complexity of toxic relationships in later life. Below are 3 anonymized portraits that reflect how real people navigated these stressors. Case 1, Adrienne, 68, the taker and the silent breakdown. Adrienne spent most of her life working as a nurse. She prided herself on helping those in need, both at work and at home. Yet after retirement, her grown brother moved in with her. He'd lost his job and claimed it was only temporary. Months passed, then a year, and he made no effort to find new employment. Adrienne, ever the giver, covered the mortgage, groceries, and utilities, hoping her brother would turn his life around. Instead, he siphoned her emotional and financial resources. When Adrienne finally mustered the courage to ask him to contribute, he lashed out, calling her selfish. She spent many nights awake questioning her moral obligations. After multiple sleepless weeks, Adrienne developed atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat that can lead to complications if unmanaged. The constant taker had effectively pushed her toward a potentially dangerous cardiac event. With medical advice and the support of a counselor, Adrienne asked her brother to move out and set strict limits on her future help. Her heart rhythm improved once she regained her sense of autonomy. Case 2, Rodney, 72, the critic and the erosion of self-worth. Rodney was known in his small town for his impeccable carpentry. He'd built everything from furniture to decks with pride and precision. Retirement allowed him time to craft small items for fun, like birdhouses or decorative shelves. However, his longtime friend, whom he socialized with almost daily, had a habit of pointing out every flaw in Rodney's creations. "Your cuts are getting sloppy," the friend would say. "Are you losing your touch?" At first, Rodney brushed it off, but the remarks piled up and he started to doubt his own skills. He tried making smaller projects, but criticism found its way into even the tiniest detail. Eventually, Rodney avoided woodworking altogether, a shift that led him to slip into mild depression. His appetite dwindled and he lost weight. A routine checkup revealed elevated cholesterol and borderline high blood pressure conditions that can escalate heart attack risk. Recognizing the toxic dynamic, Rodney distanced himself from the friend and joined a supportive woodworking club instead. The positive environment rekindled his passion and stabilized his health. Case 3. Marisol 80, the guilt tripper's heavy chains. Marisol was known as the matriarch of her family. Over the years, she opened her home to relatives during tough times. Now in her twilight years, Marisol craved peace, yet her adult niece insisted Marisol host every holiday gathering. Each time Marisol hesitated, the niece responded with teary-eyed sighs and comments like, "It's not the same without you. You wouldn't want the family to drift apart, would you?" Marisol adored her family, but her arthritis flared whenever she overexerted herself. Despite warnings from her doctor to slow down, she spent days on her feet cooking and cleaning before each holiday event. After one exhausting Thanksgiving, Marisol landed in the hospital with severe joint inflammation and dehydration. The guilt-laden requests had cornered her into risking her health for appearances. Doctors recommended rest and stress reduction strategies. Though it broke her heart, Marisol decided to step back from hosting every celebration. She offered moral support, but not her physical labor. Over time, she found a better balance between showing love and protecting her well-being. These deeper examples illustrate that each toxic archetype can lead to tangible physical harm, from elevated blood pressure to exacerbated chronic conditions. The stakes are high, and now that you see the real-world impact, let's consider the ways you can break free and preserve your later years. Action Plan. Your checklist for emotional and physical protection. Having identified these 5 toxic archetypes, the burning question is, what should you do about them? Below is a practical roadmap to help you safeguard your emotional space, maintain better health, and reduce heart attack risk. Remember, none of this replaces professional medical advice. Always consult your physician for personalized guidance. 1. Conduct a personal inventory. 24-hour challenge for the next 24 hours. Pay close attention to how you feel after every interaction, phone calls, in-person visits, even texts. Notice any spikes in anxiety, irritability, or sadness. Jot it down in a small notebook or on your phone. Identifying who triggers these emotional shifts is the first step. If you find yourself dreading a call from a certain constant taker or feeling belittled by that chronic critic, highlight that. At the end of the day, review your notes. This quick snapshot often reveals patterns you've been ignoring for years. Don't judge yourself for letting things slide. Awareness is the key to change. 2. Set micro boundaries. The next 7 days. Once you've mapped out who drains your energy, spend 7 days implementing micro boundaries. For instance, if you have a friend who calls only to criticize, limit phone conversations to 10 minutes. If you share a living space with a guilt tripper, practice calmly saying, "Not right now," without elaborate justifications. Each day, pick one relationship to focus on. Write down what boundary you'll establish. I will not give more than 15 minutes to negative phone calls, or I will say no to any requests that make me physically uncomfortable. Enforce this boundary politely but firmly. By the end of the 7 days, you'll likely see a marked difference in your mental clarity and stress levels. This approach is incremental. You're not burning bridges immediately. You're testing how boundaries affect your emotional health. If the person respects your boundary, there might be room for healing. If they react with anger or manipulation, that's a sign the relationship may need more distance. 3. Optimize your own health routines. 58. Toxic relationships often divert attention from self-care. To counter that, prioritize doctor's appointments, medication schedules, and balanced nutrition. Dr. Michael Greger, 2021 Public Talk notes that older adults who maintain a nutrient-dense diet show more resilience against stress-related conditions. Add in gentle exercises like stretching or short walks to support heart health and reduce tension. An easy approach is to create a simple checklist. Take prescribed meds on time. Drink enough water throughout the day. Incorporate at least one 15-minute walk or low-impact exercise session. Write down one positive event or personal achievement before bedtime. These steps might sound basic, but older adults often overlook them when caught up in emotionally draining relationships. Consistency here ensures that even if stress flares up from a toxic encounter, your body and mind have a healthier baseline to return to. 4. Seek allies in neutral spaces. Nothing combats toxicity like a supportive network. Identify safe people in your life, perhaps a grandchild who respects your boundaries or a neighbor who genuinely enjoys your company. Alternatively, find social groups in person or online that revolve around your interests, be it gardening book clubs or knitting circles. Passive-aggressive manipulators and secret competitors thrive when you're isolated. Expanding your social circle lessens their influence and gives you an outlet to share victories and concerns. A supportive community can also keep an eye on your well-being. If you show signs of waning energy or sadness, they might point it out before it spirals into a health crisis. You can also consider group therapy or senior support groups, many of which are free at local community centers. Listening to others who've navigated similar challenges can provide both perspective and emotional relief. Remember, you don't have to fight these battles alone. 5. Consult professionals. Sometimes boundary setting and self-care aren't enough. If a toxic individual escalates tensions threatening financial blackmail, for instance, you may need legal advice or mediators. If you're feeling overwhelmed or depressed, a mental health professional can offer coping techniques and tools for stress reduction. The WHO 2020 official website encourages older adults to engage in preventive healthcare measures. That includes mental health checkups. Don't wait until you're on the brink of a crisis to seek help. And never forget that your physician can guide you in implementing stress management strategies from meditation to short-term counseling referrals. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment, "I feel it." If you relate, "I'm safe if not," and add a question for the doctor. Let's keep the conversation flowing. Each insight you share might spark a revelation for someone else. The missing spark. Turning fear into action with a 7-day checklist. The original discussion about 5 toxic archetypes provided a stern warning, but it lacked an immediate push for transformation. This is where the 7-day checklist can become your catalyst for real change. Fear is a potent motivator, but it only works if you have a concrete plan. Below is a structured approach to ensure you walk away with more than just worry. You'll have actual steps you can share with friends and family. Day 1, self-awareness. Dedicate a full day to observing your mental and physical reactions. Each time you receive a phone call or message, pause and assess your stress level. Keep track of how your body feels. Does your heart rate go up? Do you sweat? Do you feel tightness in your chest? This is your baseline. Day 2, categorize the culprits. Write down the names of those who triggered stress responses on day 1. Next to each name label, which of the 5 toxic archetypes they might fit. Constant taker, chronic critic, guilt tripper, secret competitor, or passive-aggressive manipulator. Seeing the pattern on paper can be eye-opening. Day 3, boundary statements. Prepare simple boundary-setting sentences. For instance, "I can't talk about this now," or "I need to end our conversation if you keep criticizing my choices." Practice them out loud if necessary. This might feel awkward, but having a script can fortify you when you're caught off guard. Day 4, implement one boundary. Choose one relationship to tackle first. The next time that person calls or appears at your doorstep, use one boundary statement. Be polite but firm. Expect resistance or pushback. Don't waver. Document how the interaction goes. Day 5, reflect and adjust review. The day 4 outcome. Did you experience relief or further stress? Maybe you need to refine your boundary statement, or perhaps you realize you need a bigger step, like limiting contact. Adjust your approach accordingly, but don't give up. Boundaries often take time to stick. Day 6, seek a positive outlet. Spend this day consciously nurturing a healthy relationship or activity. Schedule coffee with a friend who uplifts you or engage in a hobby that boosts your mood. This breaks the cycle of negativity and replenishes your emotional reserve. Day 7, long-term plan. Now that you've practiced boundary setting, finalize a plan to keep it consistent. Decide how often you'll interact with each toxic person. If at all, list your self-care goals and schedule a follow-up with a healthcare professional if you have concerns about blood pressure or other stress-related issues. By the end of this 7-day period, you'll have a tested framework for dealing with those who drain you. Share this checklist with your circle. You might be surprised how many older adults long for a blueprint to escape constant guilt trips and criticism. Call to comment and build a supportive community. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment, "I feel it." If you relate, "I'm safe if not," and add a question for the doctor. These interactions will help others see they're not alone. Sometimes, just knowing others face similar struggles can lessen the sense of isolation. If you've recently implemented any of these action steps, share your experience below. Did you manage to avoid a heated argument by using a boundary statement? Or did you discover that one person in your life was more toxic than you realized? Your comment could be the final nudge someone else needs to take action. But key, building trust and credibility. By now you may wonder why I focus so much on medical and psychological data. I've observed how often older adults overlook the body-mind connection. Let these quotes from respected institutions and experts reinforce the stakes. World Health Organization 2020 official website. Chronic stress is a significant contributor to cardiovascular disease, especially in populations with diminished physiological resilience, such as older adults. Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. 2019 article on stress emotional strain can compound underlying health risks, including hypertension and compromised immune function. Attention to psychosocial factors is essential for holistic well-being. Dr. Michael Greger, 2021 Public Talk. Lifestyle adjustments from diet to stress reduction can mitigate many chronic conditions. Eliminating or reducing exposure to toxic relationships is a cornerstone of preserving mental and physical health. The science is clear. Negative relationships aren't just emotional hurdles. They can be medical risks. Consult your physician to develop a personalized plan if you suspect that stress from toxic connections is harming your health. Always seek professional guidance before altering any treatment or care regimen. Ethical reminder, never abandon prescribed care. Even if you discover that setting boundaries dramatically improves your well-being, never ditch your doctor-approved medications or interventions without discussing them first. Toxic stress might be intensifying health problems, but you still need to adhere to your prescribed routines. If you notice improvement, share that with your healthcare provider to see if adjustments are appropriate. True wellness is a combination of wise medical supervision and intentional lifestyle choices. Cutting out toxic relationships is crucial, but it doesn't replace standard treatments for chronic conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, or arthritis. Think of it as a two-pronged strategy. Keep following your physician's orders while removing the emotional hazards that might be making those orders even more necessary. The grand finale: summarize, interact, and inspire. As we reach the end of this deep dive, let's recap why these 5 toxic archetypes, the constant taker, the chronic critic, the guilt tripper, the secret competitor, and the passive-aggressive manipulator, are so hazardous. They chip away at your mental serenity, which in turn sabotages your physical health. High stress, exacerbated inflammation, and spiked blood pressure can all elevate your heart attack risk in later life. You've discovered specific steps to identify them, set boundaries, and practice self-care. You've seen the real-world consequences through anonymized case studies. You have a 24-hour challenge and a 7-day checklist to get you started. There's no excuse to ignore these signals any longer. And now, before you go, remember these 3 rapid-fire points. Point 1, toxic people deplete emotional energy and can fuel physical illness in older age. Point 2, boundary setting is your strongest immediate weapon for preserving mental well-being. Point 3, consult professionals. Medical, mental health, or legal if the situation escalates or endangers your finances and personal safety. If this script resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe for more physician-backed insights, and share with someone who might be quietly wrestling with toxic relationships. Every share can be a lifeline for someone in distress. Finally, here's one question to spark further discussion. What is one small boundary you're going to set this week, and how do you plan to handle any pushback? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments section. Your experiences might pave the way for someone else's breakthrough. Thank you for staying with me through this extended exploration. Apply these strategies, protect your heart, and reclaim the peace you deserve.